Welcome to True Echo, where real courage, hidden heroes, and unforgettable comebacks echo louder than hate. Today's story is not just about injustice, it's about what happens when you stand your ground with quiet strength, and the whole world sees who you really are. This is the story of Eleanor Briggs, a black Marine veteran in a wheelchair, mocked and assaulted in her own town, until a single phone call brought the past crashing into the present. What followed shook the town to its core and left bullies silenced in front of the entire nation. The Liberty Diner sat at the edge of Appleton, Georgia, a modest building with chipped white siding and a sign that hadn't lit up properly since 2009. But inside, it was familiar. Predictable. A place where regulars sat at the same booths every week, where the menu hadn't changed in a decade, and where comfort came with a side of hash browns. Eleanor Briggs had worked here for just over a year. To most patrons, she was the quiet woman in the wheelchair who folded napkins with military precision, refilled coffee without being asked, and rarely spoke unless spoken to. What few people knew, or bothered to ask, was that Eleanor wasn't just some middle-aged woman who rolled in from nowhere. She was a Marine. Once. Now, she was the woman who moved silently through the narrow lanes between booths, her wheelchair making a soft click-click over the old linoleum. Her presence barely registered with most customers. She didn't mind. In fact, she preferred it that way. But beneath her calm, methodical exterior was a storm of things left unsaid. The photographs tucked in her wallet. The folded flag at home on her mantle. The phantom pain that haunted her amputated leg every time the weather changed. She had survived worse than indifference. Much worse. On that Thursday afternoon, Eleanor had arrived for her usual shift. The sun was already low, streaking amber across the windows. She rolled to her corner, the same spot she always used to prep napkins and silverware. Trey, the young cook with a sleeve of tattoos, gave her a chin nod. She returned it with the smallest lift of her brow. Routine. Calm. Steady. Until the door slammed open. Four men stumbled inside, their laughter too loud for the small space. Travis Collier led the pack, a swaggering brute with a jaw like a cinder block and eyes that scanned for weakness like a predator. Behind him were Doug, Duke, and Ray, the kind of men who never outgrew high school cruelty, just upgraded it with beer and bitterness. Travis spotted Eleanor immediately. Well, he boomed, ain't it past curfew for the motorized crowd? The diner quieted. Eleanor didn't flinch. She folded a napkin. Creased. Stacked. Oh come on, Duke added with a cruel chuckle. I thought the health department had rules about wheels near food. The laughter from their booth rolled out across the diner like oil on water. Thick. Nasty. But Eleanor said nothing. Not yet. You really work here, Briggs? Travis sneered, stepping closer. Guess they'll hire anyone these days. At the counter, Melissa, the youngest waitress, looked like she wanted to intervene. Carl, the manager, gave her a warning glance and muttered, not now. Eleanor finally turned to face Travis. Would you like coffee, Mr. Collier? Or are you just here for the floor show? Her voice was calm. Measured. A scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Oh, I'm here for service, he leered. Didn't expect the staff to be, what do they call it now? Inspirational hires. Behind him, Duke leaned forward. What did you do in the Corps, anyway? Paperwork? Or were you just one of those diversity picks? The words hung in the air like rot. And still, Eleanor's face remained unreadable. I earned my stripes like any Marine, she said, eyes steady. I don't owe you the story. Oh, come on now, Travis said. Don't get all high and mighty on us. Just having a little fun. But then he stepped into her space, too close, and when she bent to pick up a menu that had slipped to the floor, Doug made his move. With both hands on her chair's handles, he shoved. Eleanor's body jolted sideways, one will lifted, and in a sickening second she slammed to the floor. Her hip struck tile. Her elbow crunched beneath her. Her prosthetic twisted under her pinned pant leg. And the coffee pot she'd been holding shattered, hot liquid splashing across her side. The diner gasped. No one moved. The photo that had been tucked in her bag slipped loose, fluttering across the floor, a younger Eleanor, standing tall in dress blues, a row of Marines behind her. "Oops," Travis said, hands raised in mock apology. "Guess her brakes are busted." Doug chuckled, already stumbling back to his booth. "Ain't she a Marine? I heard they bounce." Still, Eleanor didn't yell. She didn't cry. She pressed her palms to the ground, lifted her body with steady force, and righted herself inch by inch, pain radiating through her side but her face stone. And that's when a boy stood. 10 years old. Freckled. Curly hair beneath a baseball cap. He clutched his father's sleeve with both hands. "Dad," he said, voice sharp and piercing through the quiet, "is she a soldier?" Major David Lane, retired Army medic, sat frozen. Then slowly, he stood. "Yes," he said. "She is. A real one." Travis scoffed. "You calling in backup? What's next, a parade?" David didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone and stepped toward the door. "Yes, Roy," he said, his voice clipped. "It's Lane. I'm at Liberty Diner. You're going to want to hear this." Inside the diner, Eleanor sat upright in her chair. Her jacket was soaked, her hands scraped, but her eyes were locked on Travis now. And for the first time, Travis looked nervous. The energy in the diner had shifted. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just tense, like the air before a lightning strike. Major David Lane finished his call, his voice calm but every syllable honed like a blade. He turned, met Eleanor's gaze, and gave her a single, solemn nod. Soldier to soldier. No pity. No theatrics. Just respect. Travis was still grinning, but his eyes darted nervously toward the door. "You people always got someone to cry to," he muttered, trying to sound dismissive. "What, you gonna get her a medal now?" Eleanor didn't speak. Not yet. But the disgust in her eyes, quiet, sharp, said more than 1,000 words. Then came the sound. Distant at first. Like thunder rolling far off across the hills. A vehicle. No, more than that. Tires crunching gravel. Brakes hissing. Everyone turned toward the front window. A tan Humvee pulled up to the curb, the U.S. Marine Corps insignia emblazoned on the side like a declaration. The engine idled low, menacing. The doors opened. 3 figures emerged. Master Gunnery Sergeant Harold James moved first. Built like an old tank, he stood straight despite the oak cane he leaned on. His dress blues were immaculate, ribbons and medals gleaming like battle scars polished for inspection. Beside him strode Lieutenant Rebecca Monroe. Mid-40s, silver star on her breast pocket, eyes like razor wire. She didn't walk, she advanced, each step precise and silent. And the last was Corporal Devon Price, younger, tighter, carrying a folded Marine Corps flag tucked under one arm. They entered the diner without a word. Silence fell like a hammer. All eyes followed them as they moved in formation straight to Eleanor. When they reached her, the 3 snapped to attention and saluted. Eleanor didn't hesitate. She returned the salute, back straight, face unreadable but proud, the kind of salute that didn't come from muscle memory but from marrow. "Staff Sergeant Eleanor Briggs," Master James said, voice low and thunderous, "forgive the delay. When we got the call, we moved." Eleanor gave the faintest nod. "Still got your timing, Master Guns." At the back booth, Major Lane stood once again. His voice rang out clear. "Veterans. On your feet." It wasn't an order. It didn't need to be. One by one, the quiet crowd rose. An old man with a Korean War cap. A woman with an Air Force patch on her denim jacket. A Vietnam vet in a weathered VFW coat. Every table with a vet behind it stood tall, shoulders straight, eyes forward. They weren't strangers anymore. They were her formation now. Travis started to laugh again, too loud, too forced. What is this, a reunion tour? Come on, she dropped a coffee pot, and now we've got all of Camp Pendleton showing up. James turned slightly. You must be Travis Collier. Travis puffed up. Yeah. That's me. So what? Security footage confirms everything, Devon Price said evenly. You shoved her. Your friend dumped her chair. You laughed. You lied. Doug's face crumpled. I didn't mean to, look, I was drunk, okay? Lieutenant Monroe's voice cut in like glass. Did you or did you not assault a fellow Marine? Doug looked at Eleanor, then at the growing crowd of uniformed and civilian witnesses. I did. I screwed up. I'm sorry. Travis snorted. You all are seriously acting like she's some kind of war hero or something. Devon's eyes narrowed. She is one. Silence. She dragged me out of a burning Humvee, Devon said. With one leg. In Fallujah. When the rest of us froze, she moved. At the counter, Carl finally stepped out from behind the register. His voice shook. I knew who she was the day I hired her. He looked at Eleanor now, his jaw trembling slightly. We served in different branches, but I recognized a vet the moment I saw her. I brought her on because she earned it, not because she needed it. He looked around the room. But today I failed. I let this happen. Under my roof. He turned to Eleanor, eyes heavy. I'm sorry. That's on me. Eleanor didn't say much. She didn't need to. She gave a single nod. Then Lieutenant Monroe faced Travis directly. You mocked a combat veteran. You pushed her to the ground. You treated her like a joke. And then you lied. Travis opened his mouth, but Master James raised a hand. You're barred from every VFW post in this state, he said. And your employer will be notified. Effective immediately. Travis's bravado cracked. Doug had already slunk back to the booth, eyes low. Ray and Duke were silent, suddenly very interested in their coffee cups. Melissa, the young waitress, stepped forward hesitantly. Can I say something? James nodded. She turned to Eleanor. I saw it happen, she whispered. And I froze. I was scared. Eleanor's face softened slightly. She gave a small, reassuring nod. You spoke now, she said. That counts. Master James turned to the room, addressing them all. Let this be the day you remember something. His voice was low, but it filled every inch of the diner. Honor isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout. It lives in the choices you make when no one's watching. When you choose to protect, not mock. When you stand up, not just for yourself, but for someone who can't. He looked back at Eleanor. You didn't need us to fight your battles. You've already fought bigger ones. But we showed up because you shouldn't have to fight them alone. The room exhaled. A tension that had stretched too far for too long finally began to break. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. The bell above the diner door chimed gently as the last rays of sunlight spilled through the window. Outside, the sky had turned a deep, solemn blue, the kind of twilight that whispered of endings and beginnings all at once. Inside, the Liberty Diner felt transformed. Eleanor sat upright in her wheelchair, her uniform shirt still damp from spilled coffee, her pant legs slightly askew, but her posture solid, unyielding. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She never had been. She was Staff Sergeant Briggs. A Marine. A survivor. And now, the town knew it too. Master Gunnery Sergeant James stepped beside her. "You want us to take it from here?" he asked. Eleanor shook her head. "I'm not leaving my shift unfinished." That was Eleanor. Duty didn't vanish with uniforms. Carl came forward again, more composed this time. "Sergeant Briggs," he said, louder, clearer. "Your shift is done. As of today, this place isn't just a diner. It's a post. And you're its anchor." Eleanor blinked. It wasn't emotion, not quite. Just a flicker of something deeper. Recognition. Belonging. Then, from the far corner booth, the boy, Marcus, stepped up once more. In his hands, he held a crumpled drawing, a woman in a wheelchair, with a Marine Corps cover on her head, surrounded by a group of saluting soldiers. He walked shyly over to Eleanor and offered it without a word. She took the drawing gently, as if it were more valuable than every medal on her wall. Her fingers brushed his for just a second. "Thank you, Marine," she said. Marcus lit up like the sunrise. Behind him, Major Lane's expression was a study in restrained pride. Then something incredible happened. Every veteran in the room, still standing, moved toward Eleanor. Not in a crowd. Not in chaos. But with a kind of silent understanding. They lined up, each offering a quiet handshake, a salute, or a simple nod. No words needed. It was the kind of honor no ceremony could manufacture. And then came the twist, the moment that solidified Eleanor's legacy. Lieutenant Monroe turned toward Carl. "You mentioned your sign's busted." Carl nodded slowly. "Yeah, hasn't lit up since the Obama years." "Well," Monroe said, reaching into her jacket pocket, "the Department of Defense runs a Veterans Initiative. I think you've just become a candidate for national designation." Carl blinked. What?" She handed him a laminated card. "Welcome to the new program. As of this moment, the Liberty Diner is officially a table of honor." Carl's mouth opened. Then closed. Then opened again. "You're kidding." "No, sir," she replied. "DC will handle the press. But this place? It's now a symbol. A message. We don't leave our own behind." At that, the silence returned, but it was different now. Warmer. Like the hush after a standing ovation. Melissa stepped forward with a clipboard. I'd like to repaint the sign. I can do it. I took art classes at the community college." Carl gave her a nod. "You're hired." And with that, the old sign came down. The very next morning, it was replaced by a hand-painted plaque in navy and gold. Table of Honor. Where no one sits alone. Where no one is forgotten. That weekend, something shifted across town. Veterans from the surrounding counties began to arrive. Some in dress blues. Some in flannel and faded jeans. Some came just to see the plaque. Others came to meet the woman they'd only heard rumors about, the one who pulled men out of fire, then folded napkins in silence. And every Thursday at 1800 sharp, the Humvee returned. James. Monroe. Price. No pomp. No speeches. Just coffee, old stories, and a booth that belonged to more than one person now. They didn't need Eleanor to entertain them. She didn't need the attention. But she accepted the company. She started keeping every drawing Marcus brought in, pinning them on a backboard near the kitchen. A quiet wall of gratitude, innocence, and memory. Carl made it a rule: any disrespect, you're out. No debates. No warnings. People listened. And they came. One Saturday night, a young woman in full camis walked in. Barely 19. Shaking slightly. First deployments at dawn, she said to Melissa. I heard this was the place to come. Melissa led her to the corner booth. Eleanor rolled up beside her and poured 2 cups of coffee. Sit, she said. First cup's free for new boots. The girl laughed, nerves melting, and slid into the booth like it was sacred ground. No one disturbed them. Outside, the wind howled through the Georgia pines. But inside the diner, it was still. Steady. Solid. Weeks passed. Then months. But what happened in that diner never really faded. It didn't become a viral moment. It became something better, a legend. One born not of internet noise, but of real-life respect, repeated quietly from one veteran to the next. By spring, the Liberty Diner, now officially known as Table of Honor, had become a pilgrimage point. Motorcyclists with service patches rolled in every Saturday morning. Navy retirees in windbreakers filled the booths by the windows. Young recruits, fresh from boot camp, made it a point to stop in before being deployed. They didn't come to gawk. They came to listen. Eleanor never gave interviews. She didn't need to. Her presence said more than any story. She had returned to routine, folding napkins with precision, checking inventory, wheeling between booths with that same click-click on the linoleum floor. But now, she wasn't alone. Melissa had changed too. No longer the timid waitress who once froze at injustice, she now greeted every guest like they mattered. She memorized medals. Learned to spot campaign ribbons. She'd become the unofficial historian of Table of Honor, taking names, recording stories, even starting a digital archive. And Marcus? He didn't just visit anymore. He became a fixture. Each Saturday, he'd bring new drawings, now more detailed, sometimes featuring famous Marines, other times simply sketching scenes from the diner, Eleanor pouring coffee. A salute held just a little too long. A smile between old soldiers. His latest piece showed a long table stretching across the page, filled with service members from different generations, all eating together. At the head sat Eleanor, not smiling, but watching. Steady. Strong. The title Marcus scrawled above it in crayon, "She never left us." Carl had the drawing framed and mounted on the wall above the plaque. Eleanor said nothing. But her eyes lingered on it longer than most. Then, in late summer, a familiar sound returned. The Humvee. But this time, it wasn't the usual 3. A convoy followed, 5 vehicles in total. Uniforms from every branch stepped out. Marines. Army. Navy. Air Force. Even a Coast Guard vet with a walker. At the center stood a young man in dress blues. He approached Eleanor's booth with caution, holding something in both hands, a folded uniform. "I heard what happened," he said. "My mother served with you. She always told me about Sergeant Briggs." He paused. "She passed last year. I just got assigned my first post. She said, if I ever felt scared, I should find you." Eleanor didn't move. She simply looked at him, long, measured, then gestured toward the seat across from her. He sat down. She poured coffee for them both. And without raising her voice, she began to speak. She didn't talk about the fire or the pain. She talked about the long nights. The silence between explosions. The value of holding the line even when no one sees. And as she spoke, others in the diner quieted. Forks paused. Conversations slowed. The old VFW vet at the counter leaned closer. Melissa stopped wiping tables. Carl put down the receipts. Everyone listened. By the time she finished, the young man sat straighter. His eyes brighter. He didn't say, "Thank you." He saluted. Eleanor returned it, crisp and clean. Just like she always had. Then, 1 week later, something unexpected happened. A new plaque arrived in the mail. No note. Just a government seal. It read. To Staff Sergeant Eleanor Briggs, for valor not just in combat, but in community. Department of Defense, Civil Recognition Initiative, 2025. Carl mounted it beneath the original sign. That night, they held a private ceremony. No reporters. Just the Thursday crowd. James made a short speech. Monroe handed her a folded Marine Corps flag. Devon, ever the silent one, played a single, slow verse of taps on his bugle. And Eleanor? She just nodded. Later that evening, after the last car had rolled away, Carl locked up and turned to Eleanor one last time. You ever regret it? He asked. Coming back here? Taking this job? Eleanor looked out the window. No, she said. I just regret I didn't come home sooner. By fall, the town of Appleton was no longer the quiet, indifferent place it had once been. The diner had become its heart, a living monument that didn't just honor veterans but reminded everyone what dignity truly looked like. Word had spread far beyond Georgia. Military blogs shared the story. Local news outlets picked it up. Even a national morning show requested an interview, which Eleanor politely declined. She wasn't interested in fame. She was interested in keeping her corner of the world grounded. One Thursday evening, as the first orange leaves began to scatter across the sidewalk, a stranger walked in. He wasn't in uniform. He didn't wear a cap. But the way he scanned the room, his back ramrod straight, said he knew structure. He paused at the plaque, reading it word for word. Then he spotted Eleanor. He approached quietly. Staff Sergeant Briggs? She looked up. Yes. I'm Commander Reese. Naval Intelligence. Retired. She nodded. I came, because I have something for you. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a flash drive. It's a speech. From a senator. One of ours. He was at Fallujah. You saved his aide's life. He's been trying to find you. Eleanor's brow furrowed. Reese placed the drive on the table. He's not doing this for the cameras, he said. He just wanted you to know. What you did that day. It changed more than just those you saved. He hesitated. I was there too. I was pinned down 2 blocks from your position. I heard the comms. Heard your voice over the radio. Calm. Steady. I always wondered who that was. Eleanor said nothing. But her hand slowly slid across the table and picked up the flash drive. I'll listen, she said quietly. That night, after the diner closed and the chairs were flipped onto tables, she wheeled to the back, plugged the flash drive into Carl's old laptop, and sat alone in the office with the lights off. The senator's voice came through crackly speakers. He didn't talk politics. He talked about a voice over the radio. A woman coordinating medevac in the middle of chaos. A woman who had one leg blown off hours before but refused to be evacuated herself until every wounded Marine was out. He said she reminded him of what the military was supposed to mean. Then he ended with this. We honor flags and medals and names on plaques, but we forget the people who keep showing up after the guns go silent. Staff Sergeant Eleanor Briggs didn't just save lives that day. She saved hope. Eleanor didn't cry. She didn't smile. But she did press play again. Twice. Then quietly closed the laptop. The next morning, she added a new item to the backboard next to Marcus's drawings, a printed quote from the speech, taped under a child sketch of her saluting. By now, kids across the county were sending letters to Table of Honor, thank you notes, hand-drawn flags, messages in crayon that said things like, my grandpa was a Marine. You're just like him. Eleanor kept every one. Melissa started laminating them and pinning them around the diner like stained glass windows of gratitude. Then, one cold evening in late October, something strange happened. The door swung open, and in stepped Travis Collier. His once cocky stride was gone. He looked smaller. Hollow. He wore a faded flannel jacket, jeans worn at the knees. He stood in the entryway, unsure. Every head turned. Carl stepped out from behind the counter. Melissa stiffened. Eleanor remained seated, her hand pausing mid-napkin fold. Travis cleared his throat. "I'm not here to cause trouble." Carl said nothing. I lost everything," Travis said. "Job. My place. Got blacklisted from 3 counties." He glanced toward Eleanor, his voice softer now. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I wouldn't expect it. But I wanted to say it to your face." Eleanor didn't speak right away. When she did, her voice was low and even. "You don't get to rebuild on the backs of those you broke." Travis nodded, slowly. "I know." He turned, walked to the door. Just before stepping out, he paused. "I never believed in second chances before. Guess I had to lose everything to understand the weight of what I did." Then he left. Eleanor looked at Carl. "Change the locks tonight." Carl nodded once. "Already planned to." They never saw Travis again. But the lesson lingered. The world doesn't always offer justice. But dignity? Dignity is a choice you reclaim. Winter arrived in Appleton with a quiet chill, but inside Table of Honor, the warmth never left. Patrons came bundled in thick coats, boots tracking slush across the floor, yet conversations never ceased, always grounded in respect, never far from a quiet glance at the plaque on the wall or a nod in Eleanor's direction. Veterans who had never spoken of their time in service found themselves opening up over coffee. Strangers left with names and stories that lingered long after their plates were cleared. Eleanor had created something no medal or ribbon ever could, a home. One built not with walls, but with witness. One Saturday morning, a family arrived. A woman, mid-30s, wearing a gold star pin on her lapel. Her name was Angela. Her husband, Staff Sergeant Miguel Ortiz, had served under Eleanor in Iraq. He didn't come home. Angela had made the journey with her 2 sons, ages 9 and 12, because they'd asked one day, "Mom, who did Dad follow?" And she had answered, "He followed a woman named Eleanor Briggs." Because he trusted her. Now she stood before Eleanor, eyes glassy, hand trembling slightly. "I just wanted to see you," she said. "Say thank you. He said your orders saved half the platoon. That if you hadn't." Eleanor raised a hand gently. "You don't have to finish," she said. Angela nodded, tears threatening. Her oldest son held out a letter, a note scrawled in careful block letters that read, "Thank you for being brave when my dad needed you. He said you were the real deal." Eleanor took it carefully. Her fingers brushed the boy's. Her eyes didn't tear up. But they softened in a way that hadn't been seen since the Marine saluted her that first night. She looked at Angela's sons. "Your father was a good man," she said. "He wasn't following me. We were holding the line together." That day, the family stayed for hours. Carl made pancakes on the house. Marcus sat with the boys and showed them the drawing wall. Melissa gave Angela a to-go box packed with extra biscuits and a note that simply read, "Come back anytime. No charge." After they left, Eleanor pinned the boy's letter beside the framed quote from the senator. Another voice added to the chorus. Each one made the diner a little more sacred. That evening, Carl pulled up a chair across from Eleanor. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked, casually, sipping coffee. "Not this place, I mean the town." Eleanor considered that. Once, she might have. Might have rolled out quietly, left her past and the pain behind. But not now. "No," she said. Appleton changed. Or maybe, it remembered. Carl smiled. "That because of you?" Eleanor shook her head. No. That's because a boy asked a question his father had to answer. And because the right people stood up when it mattered. Carl chuckled. Sounds like a Marine answer. Eleanor smirked. Good. As Christmas neared, the diner hosted its first ever Veterans Eve. No press. No frills. Just free meals for anyone with a service ID and an open mic for those willing to speak. What happened was extraordinary. One by one, men and women took the mic. A Vietnam vet who hadn't spoken in public since 1975. A woman who served in Afghanistan, sharing for the first time how her PTSD nearly cost her everything. A teenage ROTC cadet who simply said, "This place made me want to serve." Eleanor sat through it all, hands folded, watching, not as a leader, but as the foundation. They were building something together. Not a monument. A movement. Spring returned, quietly at first, a slow thaw that softened the Georgia earth and coaxed life from the pine trees lining the roads around Appleton. Inside the now beloved table of honor, it felt like something else had bloomed, legacy. The plaque on the wall had become more than a dedication. It was a promise. A contract. And Eleanor Briggs was its living signature. But Eleanor wasn't seeking reverence. She still did the quiet work, refilling coffee, folding napkins, greeting every child who walked in with a nod or a "welcome home" to every returning soldier. She never sought the spotlight, and maybe that's why it always found her. One afternoon, a man in a tailored suit entered. He stood out immediately, polished shoes, federal badge clipped to his coat. He looked around, spotted Eleanor, and approached with the kind of cautious respect reserved for someone who didn't like surprises. "Staff Sergeant Briggs," he said, extending a hand. "Special Agent Keith Murray, Department of Defense. I'm here on behalf of the Secretary." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "What for?" He smiled gently, then pulled a small velvet box from his coat. "We've read the files. Fallujah. Tikrit. Kabul. And most recently, Appleton." He opened the box. Inside was a medal Eleanor never expected, the Distinguished Service Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor. "You earned this," Murray said. "Twice over. The second time wasn't in a war zone. But you stood your ground when everything told you not to. And people followed. That's leadership. That's valor." The diner went still. Carl stepped out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. Melissa froze mid-coffee pour. Marcus looked up from a booth where he was coloring. And for the first time, Eleanor Briggs looked surprised. She didn't take the medal. Not right away. Instead, she looked at Carl. Then at Melissa. Then at the back wall, at Marcus's drawings, at the letters, the crayon flags, the quote from the senator, the letter from Miguel Ortiz's son. Then she said quietly, "If I take it, I do it for all of them." Murray nodded. "That's why we're giving it to you." She reached out and took the medal, not like someone accepting an award, but like someone receiving a final piece of a long, broken puzzle. Then, slowly, she turned to Marcus and handed the box to him. "Keep it safe," she said. "That's yours now." The boy's eyes widened. "But, it's yours." "It's ours," she replied. "Just like this place." That weekend, the town renamed the street leading to the diner. What was once Chestnut Lane became Briggs Way. The mayor, a man who'd once called Eleanor just the wheelchair lady at the diner, gave a short, humble speech. "We don't just honor people when they die. We honor them when they teach us how to live." And when the new street sign was unveiled, the crowd applauded not with fanfare, but with reverence. Inside the diner, a final change had been made. Carl had removed the table Eleanor used to fold napkins. In its place stood a heavy, oak-built booth, carved with words burned deep into the wood. "For those who hold the line, even when it hurts." A permanent spot. A reminder. A seat that would never be filled by shame again. On Veterans Day the following year, Table of Honor hosted a national gathering. Soldiers came from every state. They didn't come for a medal or a speech. They came for Eleanor. To sit at her table. To salute, or shake her hand, or simply say, "Thank you." And Eleanor? She did what she always did. She listened. She poured coffee. And when the young, scared ones sat across from her, ready to ship out, she leaned in close and said the words they needed most. "You're not alone." Because Eleanor Briggs knew the truth. Bravery wasn't in the shouting. It was in the silence you endured. In the line you held, long after the fighting stopped. This was the story of Eleanor Briggs, a woman who didn't need a stage to command respect, only a chair and her dignity. At True Echo, we believe real heroes don't just fight battles overseas, they fight them at home, too. In silence. In shadows. Until someone dares to see them. Eleanor taught a town that strength isn't loud. That justice can roll in on wheels and still stand taller than hate. Let her story echo. Hit the subscribe button to honor the unsung heroes in your life. Share this video if you believe respect isn't earned by shouting, but by showing up, staying calm, and standing tall when it matters most. Tell us in the comments, who's your Eleanor Briggs? We'll be watching.